Hello, everyone, and welcome to another JordanCon interview. I'm here today with former JordanCon guest of honor and current favorite guest. Not really, I can't say that, but one of my favorite guests, David B. Coe, but also writes under the pen name DB Jackson. Thanks for joining me today, David.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be with you, Tom. Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming. This has been a ton of fun. These interviews. I hope everyone else is having fun watching them, but I've been having fun doing them, so at least someone is. Um, David is the author of more than a dozen novels, and that's just under DB Jackson. He's
Yeah, two
also
dozen novels.
two dozen novels. Yeah, I mean, like you've been writing for what, like 25 years now, or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, like there's so much work there to find. You have the ones that I really like are the Thief. I mean, like I like all your work, but the Thief Taker Chronicles have been really fun. I really like alternate history. That's like urban fantasy and alternate history, alternate mythology, stuff like that. My favorite. It's been like I didn't realize I liked it, and then all of a sudden I read like I think the Dresden Files, and I'm like I want more of this type of stuff, and
Right. Right.
I've dived into it like just with both feet. So under your own name though, you have a supernatural thriller, Radiance, that was released by Bell Books back in 2021. That's great. What else? We have the epic fantasy. That's what is it? The Lon Tobin
The
Chronicle.
Lon Chronicle. That's
Yep.
right. That was my first series back
That's
in the late '90s.
back in the days of yore, before
Seriously,
the
when we,
dark
when we, when
times.
we published books with horses and anvils and mallets and stuff. And,
Fashioning them. Oh man. And you also have a blog series on your website. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that I'm sure we're gonna dive into. But the blog series on your website is great. But I also have to mention you have a PhD in U.S. history from Stanford. Like, that's awesome. That's
Thank
really
you.
cool. So, all right, let's dive into it. Let's talk about all things David now. So, history, obviously. I mean, you write about it. You went to school for it. There's a vague interest there that extends more than just from the business and professional side, I would assume.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I still love history. I mean, one of the things I've been writing about in this blog series you mentioned is kind of how I got started writing. That's this current project I have going on my blog.
Yeah.
One of the things that I talk about is the fact that I love history, but when it came down to making my living as a historian, it just wasn't right for me. And I had spent my entire youth thinking I'm going to be a creative writer. I'm going to write fantasy novels. I mean, that had been my dream. I
Yeah.
got away from it for a while, and when faced with the choice between teaching history, I had an offer in hand, and writing fantasy, I chose fantasy. But with the Thief Taker Chronicles, I've been able to combine my geeks and make it so that I can write my fantasy and work in my magic and do some mysteries and stuff. But I'm also combining it with the history and creating these narratives that hew closely to the historical timelines, and it's just really fun.
Yeah,
It's a
I
lot.
mean, I hesitate to say, and only because I've done in doing these interviews so back to back. I remember all of the questions I've been asking everybody, and there have been other urban fantasy authors, and I've said in some form or another in each of them. But it really is the thing that I really love about urban fantasy, which I already mentioned, is how the author, you in this case, marry together your world building, your magic, your stories of your characters with the real world mythologies, religions, traditions, and history, and seeing subtle changes in things to make it make sense for your world building. And I really love that. I don't know why. I don't know why it's so entertaining to me, but I really, really like it. So I
Yeah.
guess a question that I would have for you for that specifically is how, like, you have this huge background in history, obviously. I mean, a PhD from Stanford. Uh, what is your process like if you were to sit down and take, like, I'm gonna, like, when you wrote Thief Taker Chronicle, which is like, what is it, pre-Revolutionary War, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Um, how do you like? Do you go through like a system of how, like, what magics do I use that could complement the technologies versus what's going on in the era? Like, how do you do that?
So I concentrate less on the magics. The magic, I mean, I put my lead character as a thief taker, which is kind of a 18th century private eye. His name's
Okay.
Ethan Cale, and Ethan can conjure. and his magics are kind of, I mean, I've developed a system of them. I know how they work. I'm pretty good at sticking to my magic system, but those are more kind of in the moment narrative choices, things I need to do to get him out of all the crap that I pile on him during the course of a book. The toughest thing, as I mentioned before, is marrying my fictional narrative with the historical narrative. And so when I was writing the first books, the series started as a 4-book series. I was looking for certain events that lent themselves to having a magical murder or something of the sort thrown in. So for the first story, for Thief Taker, on the night of the Stamp Act riots, which was in August of 1765, I insert a murder. And there were rioters in the streets. There was lots of opportunity for stuff like this to happen. And so it was very easy to create the opportunity for this fictional crime in the historical timeline. Okay. The second book is about the beginning of the occupation of Boston, when British troops were on ships in Boston Harbor and were occupying the city. I added an extra ship and then killed everybody on board. You know, and it's just so that's really what I enjoy doing. Is I love taking that historical timeline, adding something fictional and a little bit magical to it, and then figuring out a way to explain it and solve the crime without violating any of the historical rules and any of the historical narrative.
That's pretty cool. All right, so speaking of maybe not violating the historical narrative, but is there any have you ever been tempted to, like, you know, there's this bit of history that you're aware of, you know, because you have a doctorate in it, and you want to frame it in a way or change it slightly or really bring to light maybe a villain or someone who was, you know, on the wrong side of history in a case, and make them a villain in your book, or paint them in the light that, you know, is appropriate for them, and you know, or do you play with it a little bit, not change, but bring to light things that, you know, you are passionate about within history itself?
Right. And so the short answer is yes, I do a little of that. There are certain rules I like to follow. So with the first book, for instance, there is a historical ambiguity in the date in which a certain thing happens.
Okay.
The character the historical character who was actually the instigator of the riots that night is jailed and then released. And there are conflicting accounts of when he was released. Well, for my purposes, one of the dates on which he might have been released worked really well. So I decided that was when he was released. But I also feel, so Samuel Adams appears in the books, John Adams appears in the books, Joseph Warren, lots of, I mean, if there are history geeks out there, they know these names, you know, not just the Adams, but Joseph Warren and a few others. And those are characters who I feel like I don't own.
Yeah.
Those are communally owned people. They belong to anybody who is a citizen of this country.
Absolutely.
And so there is only so much I will do in shaping the character, because I don't feel comfortable taking over that person in a way. And so I won't turn John Adams or Sam Adams into a villain. And when there are historical characters who are distasteful, I try to give as much perspective on that as possible, so that you might get the distaste, but you also get kind of the motivation and why whatever you're thinking about them is in keeping with their sense of what was right and wrong. So Thomas Hutchinson, the lieutenant governor of Massachusetts, people don't, I mean, you know, I don't like him as a historical figure, and he was a villain to the colonists, but he also had his own trials and tribulations and his reasons for doing the things he did. And I feel like I need to respect that because they're historical figures.
Yeah, and historical.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really just interested in picking the, you know, your brain and how you do these things. Like, how do you write, and especially as being a PhD in history, you know, Like, you know what the history is, and you have a certain reverence for it, be it bad or good. So you're, I feel like it could go one way or the other. Either you're going to write it in a way that it's like, the way you wish it would have gone, or you're going to stay true. And like you said, you have these rules you're following, and even in complete fiction, it's always good to have a villain who doesn't think of themselves as a villain. So, like, that's how, if they're the character, you have to write them how they would view themselves. And almost no one views themselves as the villain. So that's it. And I always find it most interesting to read about characters specifically who have flaws, whether they're the villains or the heroes. They're the most interesting. A completely flawless hero is boring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you know, having read the series, the best villain I have is actually never the true villain of a story. She's Ethan's nemesis. Her name is Saphira Price. And she is awful, and yet my readers love her.
Of course.
And I love her. She is so much fun to write.
I never tire of hearing the different ways authors speak about their characters. It's either like they're your children, brothers and sisters, the voices that live in your head. Like, it's fantastic. And so do you ever find your characters acting up in a way that you didn't plan, or circumstances snowball into things that maybe you didn't want it to go a certain way, but it works this way, so you're forced to change your plans to meet the character's demands?
Every book I've ever written, my characters have asserted themselves in ways that I couldn't have anticipated.
That's fantastic.
And I really think that is the secret ingredient to a good story. The moment the characters start thinking on their own and doing stuff you don't expect, that's when they've really come to life on the page, and that's when readers start to react to them. So in the most recent Thief Taker, which is it was a trilogy of novellas that came out this fall, and then we put out an omnibus of the trilogy that was called The Loyalist Witch. There's a scene in which Ethan and Saphira end up getting boozy together. They're talking, and she's like, okay, I'm going to help you, but if I'm going to help you, you're going to get drunk with me. And that wasn't something I planned, but all of a sudden she had a bottle of Martinique rum in her hand, and it was like, she's going to make him drink that. Right. And it made for a really fun scene. And I actually Facebooked. I was like, I'm writing this new Thief Taker thing, and Ethan's getting boozy with Saphira, and my fans were like, he's what? He's doing what?
That's fantastic. I love it. I love that type of interaction, both with, how you're interacting with the characters, how people are interacting with you, who are then interacting with the character. It's great. It's fantastic. I love seeing that stuff. And yeah, it does. It really does. You can feel it. You can feel it when you're reading a book. And I especially love having this type of insight where it's like, you're telling us that this happens. Yeah. I don't know why. Again, maybe it's. I guess it's not just me, because a lot of people say that this is very interesting. That I love hearing these types of stories. They're absolutely fantastic. I did get so when I read it, I didn't read the most recent novellas. The pandemic has played really weird things. Like, it feels like we should have more time, like more downtime. But
we don't.
We don't. We're home 24 hours a day almost for the past 2 years, at least my wife and I have been. And it feels like we have less time to do leisurely activities.
Well, I'll have a copy of the book to sell you when JordanCon meets. So yeah.
Always. I will always buy books for my friends. Support your friends. Don't ask for free things. This is a word directly to people watching this right now. And if you ever, and you can back me up with this, David, or correct me if I'm wrong. One of the best things that you could do for writers is review their books, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Make sure...
I mean, we want good reviews, obviously, but any review, because of the algorithms on places like Amazon, the more reviews a story has, the more it shows up in those emails that come across our desk saying, hey, we think you might enjoy this.
Yeah.
And so, yes, reviews are wonderful for authors.
Yeah. kind of sad. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You finish.
No, I was just going to say, and good reviews warm our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. I mean, oh, man, I am always hesitant to put myself out on like places where people could comment on me because you guys have to have a crazy thick skin. All of you authors, like I'm sure there's the trolls out there, which in the Wheel of Time community we call the book cloaks.
Uh-huh.
For reasons obvious for people who have read the Wheel of Time. But it's a tough thing to have to deal with the online review section of anything, and it's sad that we have to depend on the algorithms and stuff like that, but it is super duper helpful. Like I've heard many an author tell me that reviewing is hugely helpful, whether it's on Amazon, Goodreads, all of those types of things. If you enjoy it, great. If you don't, be constructive about it and understand that just because you don't like something, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you don't like it, which is fine. Don't like things, but it doesn't make what you don't like bad.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, it does.
Okay. So we talked about, some of your books. We're trying to keep these interviews somewhat short, but
I'm gonna put in a pitch then, because the series I have going now.
Absolutely.
I have a book that's coming out by the time this airs, it will be out. It's coming out the 18th of February, and it's called Invasives. And it's the second book in my Radiant supernatural thriller series. It's written under the David B. Coe. I was going to say pseudonym, but that's my real name.
That's your real name.
But
do you get confused sometimes?
Yes, I do, and I've signed the wrong name in books. So just, but these are really fun books, and this one, Invasives, is my lead characters are a trio of homeless teenagers who live in the subway tunnels underneath New York City.
Okay.
And one of them has these supernatural powers, and she has stumbled across a financial scheme to make millions, and she is being pursued by the assassins hired by this big financial corporation. It's a really fun book.
That sounds like fun.
I wrote it.
I have not read this series yet. Sorry.
Yeah, it's, and I don't know if you've seen the artwork. The artwork for these books is phenomenal.
Well, we will, because we'll have links all around this video for people to see.
Okay. The artwork is spectacular.
Who does the art?
The art was done by Deb Dixon. It was done in-house at Bell Books.
That's awesome.
And Deb she's a fantastic editor. She might be the best editor I've ever worked with.
She's been a guest at JordanCon before too. She's great.
Yeah, she's wonderful, and she does these amazing covers. But these are books. This one book, writing it got me through a family crisis, and it's fraught with emotion. It's suspenseful. It's exciting, and it's some of the best character work I have ever done. I love these books, so I'm very excited about them. So that's what I wanted to get the pitch in.
Yeah, then I have to ask. I have to ask you about them. So, you said the main characters are a trio of homeless teenagers from New York.
Yeah, living in the subway tunnel.
In the subways of New York. So, how did you settle on these characters to be your protagonists or just main focus of the books? Did you do any types of what occurred to you, I guess, to use these types of characters, and then what kind did you have to do any kind of research to get into the mind of teenagers who might be homeless in New York? Because you don't resemble a teenager who is either homeless or living in New York.
Well, so I've raised two teenagers. They're both in their 20s now, but I've raised two teenagers. So the interesting thing about these characters is the characters came to me 12, 13 years ago. And they presented themselves in the context of another series I was considering writing that I never did write.
Okay.
But the characters they came to me fully fleshed out. It was like all of a sudden I'm writing down character sketches of the three of them, and I can't write fast enough to keep up with the ideas that are coming. Cool. And the dynamic among the three of them. So one of them is a runaway girl. One of them is a blind kid, a guy, and one of them is and he comes from kind of a rich background but has something really dark in his past that I'm not going to give away.
Okay.
And then the third one is kind of a street kid who was in gangs and had to turn witness on the gang, and so is now alone, except he's hooked up with these two other people, and they have this, they're kind of cross attractions, but she's like, she wants none of it, and there's a rivalry between the two guys, but they're also like brothers, and it's just, and all of this stuff came to me, as I said, I mean, it was just 1 or 2 frenzied days of writing all these things down, and then I never wrote the series, and I finished the first Radiance book.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I need an idea for the second. And it was like, oh my God, I have these 3 characters sitting in the wings. And I even have the scheme that kind of puts them in danger. That was from the original story idea. And it worked perfectly as a Radiance story. And all of a sudden I was able to use these characters. And it was like meeting up with old friends from college, you know, and having this like, guys, it's so good to see you again. Look what we're going to do.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I love hearing this process. Like it's such an interesting, like, to like just dive into, like, you know, an author's brain, which I'm always curious about, because it's like all of these characters and personalities and stories that you all write about, especially you, because you have so many to choose from, and they're so vastly different in a lot of cases that it's just so it's interesting to hear. Yeah. Like it sounds so much reminiscent to like, so the only experience I have in this, which I'm sure a lot of I know for a fact a lot of the attendees of JordanCon have as well, is like DMing for like a tabletop role-playing game, where it's like, sure. And I'm sure a lot of players, but I can attest, I can probably say all DMs have just a plethora of character sheets of the characters they never get to play because they're DMing forever. But also, you know, you throw out as NPCs every now and then, and it's the similarity with how you're talking about how these characters came to you, and it was just frenzied. You have to get them out, so, you know, like, they have a mind of their own. It's so great to hear about that. It's cool. Speaking of, so do you have like any hobbies or things that you nerd out about? Like, obviously writing and storytelling and reading other people's works, but is there any particular just fun leisure activity that you are interested in yourself?
Yeah, I'm very lucky in that I have a lot of interests, and I, as a writer and a self-employed person, I have a little bit of time to pursue them. So I am a musician. I've been playing guitar for 45 years, and I sing, and so I enjoy that. I'm an avid photographer. I've been in local galleries. I've made some sales. I've had some stuff published, and I love doing it. It's mostly landscape and nature photography, and I just love doing it.
Is that under your name, under David Coe?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I got to go creep and look at your pictures now.
And I'm a bird watcher. I'm an avid bird watcher and have been since I was 7 years old.
That's really cool too. So I've never personally like dove into that culture of bird watching, but I worked for New York State for a long time and outside. So like I'm pretty privy to a lot of and I can't remember the name. Y'all have a name for bird watching.
Twitchers?
Yep, that's it. Okay. And it's
actually a Britishism.
Oh, okay, cool. I would run into bird watchers a lot because I worked on the ocean. So, you know, there were all kinds of nesting birds that nest on the ocean. There was a couple of endangered species that they were always wanting to take pictures of, and we always had to keep them away because it was up to us to.
Oh, I know exactly what bird you're talking about. The piping plover.
Piping plovers. That is correct. All right. So Chad doesn't need to edit it out. We could just edit it.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
so yeah,
and they nest over like on the barrier islands on Long Island, West Hampton and East Hampton and all those. Yep.
We had them where I lived in Long Beach as well. That's where I'm from originally, but also the municipality I worked for was all along everywhere. There was beach along the ocean, but also along the bay. They were just everywhere.
Yep.
The killdeer, we had to protect. They're common, but we had to protect them because, correct me if I'm wrong again, I mean, you probably know better than I do. They nest on the ground, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. They were annoying because it's like, come on, how stupid do you got to be? Make a nest in the middle of a parking lot. We're like,
and they do this thing. If you get near their nest, the adults pretend that they're wounded.
Oh,
and they
I've seen that too.
Hobble away with a broken wing and then if you get too close, they fly off. But they
Oh,
do
okay.
that to lure you away from the nest.
Yeah, I've definitely seen them do that. I don't know which bird it is. I thought it would maybe been the kildare, but they like if we get too close to the nest, they like put their wings up and look all big and puffed out. I don't know which bird it was, but that would happen a lot of times too when I was on work sites. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was that's funny. That's funny that crossed over there. I haven't talked about the kildare or the piping plovers in the 8 years that I've moved away from New York, but we used to have to corner off areas for them and everything.
Oh yeah, piping plovers are still endangered.
Yes, yes. I
And
mean, I complain about it only because I had a lug fence around, but I do respect the fact that we moved into their territory. I'm very like I worked for conservation and waterways department, and I do care about the conservation of the environment and all that stuff. But I did have to lug that fence around, and it was annoying. So,
Yeah.
so that's really cool about the bird watching though, and I used to run into bird watchers a lot trying to take pictures
Oh,
of
I'm
piping
sure.
plovers. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I got to know a couple of them. It's been so many years, I don't remember their names or anything. But man, they had awesome cameras, which I guess that's probably which came first, the photography or the bird watching, or did they
The
kind
bird
of?
watching came first.
Okay.
The bird watching definitely came first. And the photography, I mean, if you just go to my blog, for a
Yeah.
while I was doing a photo a week. Every Friday I'd post a new photo. So just go back through the archives for 2020 and there's tons and tons of photos
Oh,
there.
I can't wait to read those. I do want to actually mention one specific blog post that you wrote. Actually, it's the most recent one, and it's poignant for me specifically because it's something that I struggle with. Not in the same vein, but it's along those same lines. So your most recent blog post, and I want to get the name right, so I'm going to pull it up. Was Professional Wednesday, a rant about rejections and quitting, and this blog post, without giving away the entire thing, because it is very well written and I enjoyed reading it. Someone that you work with has to give out rejections for an anthology. Someone replied with a pretty rude note in their rejection, and you go into it about that. I'll let you speak on it if you want to.
Yeah, sure.
But how it applied to me, and it actually helped me a bit, so thank you, first of all, is for JordanCon, we have an application process, which you get to go around because one of the benefits of being a guest of honor is you have a blanket invite in perpetuity as a guest of honor. And that's fantastic because I don't have to ever say no to some people, and that's great. But some years we do actually have to turn people down, and we have over 100 applicants this year, and we only we're kind of a small con. We're bound by the space that we have and the how many panels we can run. If we accept 150 guests, we don't have enough panels to have those people on. Like, what are you going to do if I accept you as a guest? You can't have a table because we only have spaces for 30, and can't put you on panels because we only have so many panels. So it's like, now what do I do? But and I always have that. I hate sending out the rejection emails. I hate it. I hate it so much. And thankfully, I've never had anyone respond quite like this person did, or really negatively at all. It's always either like you cite in the first part of your blog, either nothing or just thank you for the consideration, and I look forward to when the application's open next year, and that's usually it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want you to just you worded it so greatly in your article. Just if you care to go into it.
Yeah. So what happened was we had one person respond to a rejection from an anthology by essentially saying, I had been thinking that if I was rejected if this story was rejected, I was done. I wasn't going to submit to anything anymore. So congratulations, you just killed a budding writing career. And first of all, as I said in the post, that's not a career murder, that's literary suicide.
Yeah,
because
that's the tagline too, like at the end, and it's perfect.
Yeah, nobody told him, and I'm assuming it was a guy, but I really don't know this for a fact.
That's true.
It just read like a guy.
It does.
But nobody told this person that they had to quit. They're choosing to quit. And the fact of the matter is, if you're a writer, rejection and criticism is part of the game.
Yeah.
I have 25 books in print. I've won awards. I've gotten starred reviews. I have published as many short stories as I have novels. the Radiance series was rejected by like 8 or 9 different places before we kind of until we finally found a home for it with Bell Books.
Yeah.
And rejection is part of the game. And if you can't take rejection, then you're not going to be able to take it when an editor tells you, you know, I love the book, but you need to change this and this and this and this and this, which is what editors do. It's what editors are paid to do.
And as an editor yourself, you know that.
Yeah. And what writers need to understand, beginning writers in particular, professionals who have been doing this for a while totally get this and they understand how things work.
Yeah.
But what the criticisms are striving for and what the rejections are striving for is to get your work to be the best it can possibly be. And with the rejections, with respect to the rejections, what this means is you maybe didn't make it into this anthology, but next time around, your story is going to be a little stronger because you're going to have gone back and polished it. And maybe next time you'll make the sale. And with the criticisms, what editors are doing is trying to tease out the story that you're trying to tell in the way that makes it as effective and emotionally powerful and narratively satisfying as possible.
I want to. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, you finish.
I was just gonna say, and so you have to be able to take rejection because it's a point, as I said in the post, it's a point in a negotiation, in a creative negotiation.
Yeah.
You are negotiating with the marketplace, trying to get your story out there, and one place turns it down, but the next place might take it. This is part of the process, and if you can't take it, then yeah, maybe you should quit.
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I can say that probably applies to just life in general.
Yes.
Like, you know, there are definitely times when people are not asking for criticism and things, and it's probably not, you know, a person's place to give them criticism. But in this case, and in all situations where it comes to editors and exceptions, it is like, that's where it is literally the point of it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
One thing that I've heard from a couple, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 of the people who are either just editors or authors and editors in these interviews is almost verbatim for something that you just said, which is, as an editor, you're trying to, I mean, maybe not verbatim, but very close. As an editor, you're trying to pull out the story that the author is trying to tell.
Yes.
And I mean, I am not an author or an editor, but from what I've understood working with, you know, brilliant people like yourself, is there's 2 very distinct professions as editor and or author. I mean, being one and being both is probably complementary, you know, like you understand things from both points of view and it helps in both aspects, but
right.
They are 2 very different skill sets. And one person is helping you get your book to market as the editor, and then the other person is the creative behind the book. Someone who's really good at one may not be really good at the other, but obviously in yourself, there are people who are good at both. And taking those criticisms from one who is good either at one or the other is something that people should be able to take and not, you know, I mean, obviously there are people that give these types of criticisms in a negative fashion, but I know you, and I'm pretty sure if you're friends with people who are giving out these things, they're probably not negative either. So,
you know, part of it is that when we edit, we reword.
Yeah.
We offer, and whenever I'm editing, I always try to make clear what's in the margin here. What you're seeing in track changes is my suggestion of how you might word this in a way that makes it clearer. And I'm not saying you have to use my wording. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is there's a problem here with clarity. And even if you don't use the words I've suggested, you need to make a change because the way it's worded right now isn't getting your point across.
Okay. Especially to someone from the outside that's reading. Because when you write something yourself, like if I were to write something, I would understand what I was saying. But someone else isn't going to understand what's in my head. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing to get out to a lot of because we do, and you know, that we do have a large community who participates in the JordanCon workshop, the slush panel. There's a lot of budding authors who attend JordanCon as just attendees, let alone, you know, we have a lot of indie and self-published authors that are guests as well. So that's a great bit of advice for everybody. I mean, not just authors too, just in life in general. But no, yeah, I got something from that, even though it's completely, I don't want to say completely unrelated, but it is very unrelated. It's not editing or being an author. Just sending out rejection things is hard.
It's hard work.
It's
It's
very hard.
thankless job. It really is.
So I've been wrapping these interviews up with a little bit that from a show that I don't know if you're familiar with, Inside the Actor Studio with James Lipton.
Nope.
Okay, so there was a show. It was on for a million years. I used to watch with my mom when I was younger. It's called Inside the Actor Studio with James Lipton. He would interview actors, super famous actors. James Lipton was a teacher. I want to say it was Juilliard, but I could have made that up. He was a very famous acting teacher, and the audience were his classes, and he would interview actors. Sometimes it would be like, Al Pacino, Robin Williams. He even went into, I think he actually died, I want to say 2 years ago, but he, all the way up into the late 2000s, was interviewing actors. And he even did like the entire cast of The Simpsons on one episode, which was a great episode.
I'll bet.
Yeah. But at the end of each interview, he would ask a series of questions. And I've pared those questions down to just like a handful of like the ones I particularly enjoyed. And I've been asking everyone them to wrap the interviews up. Okay. So without any more ado, the first one is, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word? Holy crap.
Yeah. Or just a word that brings you joy or that you like to hear.
I have no idea.
And if you do want
to... great question.
Thank you. I mean, it's not me, it's James Lipton. All the props to him. The late, great James Lipton.
Scintilla.
Okay. And we'll leave that up to everyone else to figure out what that means. What is your least favorite word? Or a word that you just don't like to hear?
It's so funny. My kids, both my daughters, have certain words that just, like, you say them and they're like, oh, just don't, Dad. I don't want to hear, like, moist. Both girls like freak out when I use the word moist, and so I can't write that word anymore. I really don't use moist.
You see them in your head.
Yes, yeah, I see them both just shaking their heads, letting it. So I'll go with moist.
Okay, perfect. I like it. What is the first thing that you notice about another person when you meet them?
Their eyes.
And other than the plethora of professions that that we've talked about just here, is there any other profession that, given all the time and resources, that you would like to attempt? Not even for a business, just a hobby or something like that.
Well, actually, I would. If somebody were to say, okay, you can't write anymore, you're done with that, you're not going to edit, you have to choose a new career, I'd choose professional photographer.
Okay.
Because I love it that much.
And then the last one, which you don't have to answer directly if you don't want to, is, what is your favorite curse word?
Fuck. When it's used well.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm thinking, have you seen the movie The Departed?
Yep.
Where every other fucking word is.
Yep.
And when it's used poorly, it sounds gratuitous and crass.
Yeah.
And when it's used artistically, as it is in that movie, it's like fucking poetry, man. it's just beautiful.
Yeah. I would throw the into that ring also Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
Especially Robin Williams, and pretty much every line he has in that movie. I believe I think he says fuck like in every single line in that movie, which is fantastic. I totally agree with you. It's a very diverse word as well. It could be used anywhere. Adjective, adverb, everywhere. Verbs. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this interview, and David or DB Jackson, you could find him, all of his books, under whatever name that he wrote them under, on his website, which is just davidbco.com. There'll be links all over the place. Links to the pictures that we spoke about, links to his websites, either below this video or within the blog post that they're using for this when the time comes. So thank you, David. Thanks for joining me, and I can't wait to see you at JordanCon.
My pleasure. Thanks so much to you, and I'm looking forward to it. I've missed doing cons, and I love JordanCon every year.
We love you too.